Welcome. This is an instructional video tutorial on how to set up your reservations for your website. The AtHomeNet reservation feature was designed to allow communities to more easily facilitate and control resident reservations of community resources. This feature should be able to handle a broad array of community reservation needs, ranging from tennis courts to clubhouse meeting rooms and even golf tee times. Because of the flexibility designed into this feature, it is a bit more complex to initially set up than some of your other AtHomeNet community website features. What follows is how to set up this feature. In order to set up reservations, there are two features necessary to create and use your reservations. The first one is the feature called Facilities. You must create the facility that you're going to use in your reservations feature in the Facilities feature. So go to Facilities, Add, Edit, and Delete Facilities, and add your new facility. The only required fields are the facility name and the number of maximum reservations per day per person. Then save your facility. Once the facility has been created, you can then go to your reservations feature. Once in the feature, you're going to want to go to the Add, Edit, and Delete Resources link and click on Add. And in the short description field, you're going to add the same description as for your facility that you just added. The long description is optional. The view security level determines who can view this resource in order to make a reservation. Normal circumstances, just put a 50 as that is the default level for your residents. Choose the facility that you just created from the drop-down list. Now the next fields require a little bit of in-depth explanation. The shortest reservation is the shortest amount of time that the reservation can be made for. This value is in minutes. The longest reservation is the longest amount of time the reservation can be made for. It is the same value, it's in minutes. The shortest advance booking is the shortest time in advance that a resident can make a reservation. Often communities establish that a reservation must be made at least 1 or 2 hours in advance. The longest advance booking is the longest time in advance that a resident can make a reservation. If you can only reserve a tennis court no more than 2 days in advance, you would set this value to 48 hours. This value is in hours. The reservation increment indicates the minimum increment that reservations can occur in. This is what sets the number of fields in your reservation table that people will see when they want to make reservation for this resource. If you make the reservation increment 60 minutes, you're going to have a maximum of 24 increments that someone can make a reservation for. The maximum reservations per day determines how many times in a particular day a particular resident can reserve a particular resource. Note that this does not preclude a resident from making reservations for other resources at other times. And typically this value should match the same maximum reservations per day value that you set when you created the facility. In this case, 2. The Requires Approval checkbox determines whether or not a reservation request will automatically be approved or if it has to go through someone else for approval. If you do check this, then you can set an approver for these reservations. The new reservation instructions and the reservation auto-response fields are optional. You can put information that is necessary for someone to make a decision on a reservation in the instructions field, and you can put an auto-response message that will appear on the website when somebody submits a reservation request. in the reservation auto response field. And last but not least, the approver can be selected. If you checked the requires approval checkbox, you would then want to select an approver from your list. When you are finished, click Save, and your resource should be created. The next step in the reservation creation would be to adjust the availability for this resource. To do so, go back to your Reservations feature. Go back to Add, Edit, and Delete Resources. Highlight and edit the resource you're editing. And at the bottom, you will see three links: Add, Edit, and Delete Attributes, Add, Edit, and Delete Availability, and Add, Edit, and Delete Reservation Questions. The availability is the next thing you want to look at. You're going to set time frames for each day of the week that this resource will be available. Starting with Monday, you can set an opening time and a closing time, and click Add. That sets one day. Add a new time frame for each additional day that this resource will be open. In this example, I'm only going to set 3 days, but you see how this is done. Once you have finished setting the availability for this resource, you can then go to your Reservations feature, and you should begin to see for this feature available time slots to be able to make reservations for this feature. But you're not finished. There are other items to address when creating this resource. If you go back to the Add, Edit, and Delete Resources, highlight your resource, click Edit. There were two other links to go back to. Add, Edit, and Delete Attributes for this resource allows you to add, edit, or delete what can be considered sales pitches for this resource. For instance, on a swimming pool, you might want to indicate whether or not the pool is heated. For tennis courts, whether or not they're lit at night. For the dance hall, whether or not possibly it has a PA system. So for this example, I'm going to add a description. I'll save that resource. Now if you go back to the Reservations, Add, Edit, and Delete Resources, choose your resource, click Edit. The last item in those three links is to add, edit, or delete reservation questions for this resource. Here you can add additional questions to ask of the reserver what you need to know about the reservation. For instance, when considering a dance hall, I may want to ask a required question and save. This question will be asked whenever anybody wants to reserve a time slot for this particular resource. Now let's go to the Reservations feature, and we'll take a look, seeing as how I only have it for 3 days. There we go. Let's choose 11 o'clock, and I will click to make a reservation. The additional question I asked is included in the reservation form. You can set the reservation date, the start and end time. The description of the reservation is required. The number of attendees, how many people are in your party. In this case, I kind of duplicated the number of attendees question, but you get the idea. And how many occurrences of this reservation, which only appears for administrators. Residents that make reservations will not get the ability to make recurring reservations. This section of the reservation application only appears for administrators. Once the resident has filled in the required information, they click Save Reservation, and If the reservation does not require approval, then the reservation will show up on the reservations page for this individual resource. If you click on it, it should give you the reservation details put in by the person reserving. If you go back to the reservations and you click on the Add, Edit, and Delete Resources link, another button to use is the Clone button. Say, for instance, you have 7 tennis courts and you want to create the ability to reserve each one individually. Once you create one tennis court resource, you can clone that resource and all of the details about it by just clicking one button. You can put in the number of clone copies you want to make of this resource, and when you continue, you can name them. And that's how easy it is to clone resources to use for reservations. Some additional guidelines for setup for administrators are, if you do not already have the facility set up, you should do that first. You want to establish your resources. You do that by clicking the Reservations feature on the menu and clicking on Add, Edit, and Delete Resources. Establish the availability for each of your resources. You do that by clicking on Reservations and then Add, Edit, and Delete Resources, and then click on the Edit button to edit a particular resource, and then finally click the Add, Edit, and Delete Availability for that resource. Finally, add any needed attributes for each particular resource. And then last, if you have more similar identical resources to create, use the clone feature on the resource edit screen to quickly make copies of this first resource. This concludes the tutorial on how to create and use a reservations feature on your website. For more website tutorials, please visit www.athomenet.com and explore our videos area. Thank you for watching.